Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. So today we're going to be starting our pathway through the cardiovascular system, and to begin that we're going to be talking about the blood because the blood is what moves around in the system. So in this video here we're going to identify the components of the blood. So the blood isn't just your red blood cells or white blood cells, platelets, plasma. There's a lot going on in our blood and how it transports. So here we'll look at the structure of blood, the function and composition as well, what makes it up, how does it act, what properties does it have, and things like that. And we'll do a little aside here on the different blood types that exist. In the next video, it's going to be a little different. We're going to be talking about the lymphatic system. It just kind of flows with the next part here. That way, in the next group of videos or the next module, we can focus on talking about the heart and the blood vessels and so forth. It keeps all those together. So lymphatic system is a vessel and kind of goes hand in hand with all of this too, but we'll be talking about it in the next video. But first here, the components of blood. So blood, one has plasma, has red blood cells, has white blood cells, and has platelets. So that's what makes up blood. Remember, blood is a connective tissue. So blood has other things in it as well, has a ground substance. That ground substance here is the plasma, where it's mostly water. I think it's like 92% water is what's found in this plasma. Plasma is this straw, sticky substance, or straw-colored sticky substance. Then you have a lot of proteins. Most of that remaining percent are the proteins dissolved in your plasma that your body's carrying around. This includes hormones, enzymes, and so forth. One of the main proteins in it is called albumin. Albumin is an important carrier and of other substances, so some lipids and things like that. And also it's an important thing for maintaining blood osmotic pressure, so that when you go through a capillary bed and all the stuff is pushed out this end, the albumin remains and then helps pull interstitial fluid and whatnot back in at the other end to help maintain your blood pressure. It keeps your fluid levels steady. The same sort of phenomena happens in the kidneys for renal filtration, in the kidneys for urine output. So we'll talk about that again there when we get to the urinary system. And then the other thing that's moving about in the blood, along with some other stuff, are your electrolytes. So keeping your important ion balance in your bodies are important. So electrolytes like calcium, sodium, potassium, chloride ions, just to name a few important ions moving about that are essential for all functions in your body. So that's the plasma. That's the fluid that's in your blood. Next up, then, we have the erythrocytes. The erythrocytes are the red blood cells. So erythema is a redness. Erythrocytes, red cells, is literally what that word means. Red blood cells, I'll jump down to this image here. I actually generated this one using Dolly, so using AI, just because I couldn't find a good one in our OpenStax book. So red blood cells have this biconcave shape to them. So if I were to draw one over here, they kind of look like this from a side profile. So the sides are much larger, and then the middle is more indented. So concave is where it points in. And that allows, one, it increases the surface area of erythrocytes. Increasing the surface area allows more efficient gas exchange, CO2 and oxygen. We just talked about the respiratory system and the importance of that gas exchange at the lungs and the tissues. It also allows it to squeeze through small capillaries. So red blood cells are pretty small, but capillaries can be smaller. So it allows them to squeeze. There's a protein in them called spectrin, which gives it its flexibility and ability to squeeze through capillaries. Now, one unique thing about red blood cells is they do not have a nucleus. Typically, there'd be a blue nucleus in the middle of a cell. If you stain it that way. Red blood cells do not have that. Now, we're not going through the formation pathway of red blood cells and how they eventually eject that nucleus out, but they do not have it in the final mature stage here. Red blood cells are just completely packed full with a protein called hemoglobin. This is what that protein looks like right here. So hemoglobin is made up of a heme and a globin. The heme, so there are 4 heme parts. Sometimes these are referred to as the iron perforin ring. So right here you see Fe. Fe is iron. That's what oxygen binds to and is then carried around. So one hemoglobin can bind 4 oxygen because there are 4 globin subunits. 1, 2, 3, 4. And they come together in what's called the quaternary structure of this protein, and they then form this structure. So there's 2 betas and 2 alpha globin side chains, and each of these globins have a heme in the middle that can bind 1 oxygen. Now, when you pack these red blood cells with hemoglobin, you can fit about 250 million hemoglobins into one red blood cell. That's a lot of protein. And each of those can carry 4 oxygens. That means you can have, so 250 times 4 is about 1 billion oxygen molecules in one little red blood cell. And you can have like 4 million red blood cells in 1 microliter. 1 microliter is very small. 1 milliliter has 1,000 microliters in it, just to give you an idea of how small that volume is. So you can carry a lot of oxygen in your blood. Now, we talked about that a little bit in the respiratory system, so probably talked about it a little too much right here, but just wanted to give a reminder of hemoglobin and oxygen transport. And also remember, CO2 can be transported and so forth. But there are no organelles or anything like that in red blood cells because you don't want them to utilize the oxygen that they are delivering. Next, we get to the white blood cells. White blood cells, the fancier term, or white cells, leukocytes. Now, the image I show here, all of these formed elements are known as formed elements in our blood because they are what are formed and found in it, derived from a hematopoietic stem cell. These hematopoietic stem cells go down different lineages to give rise to all of the different formed elements. We have erythrocytes, red blood cells. We have our white blood cells. There's a couple of them, and here's some more over here. And then we also have our platelets. All of these derive from these hematopoietic stem cells. So they're like the grandparent of them all, and different factors, different growth factors like colony stimulating factors. For red blood cells, there'd be erythropoietin. It's a hormone that's released. There could be different interleukins. Those are signaling molecules in the immune system for coding the different white blood cells. So this was a C here, colony stimulating factors. But so all of that can cause these different lineages to go after that stem cell divides. Now, we're not going to go through this image and the details of it. This is just a survey course, so I'm not going to go into those sorts of details here, but we will talk about the different white blood cells. So white blood cells are all play an important function in our immune system. They are all phagocytic to some degree, so they can reach out and engulf other things. So the white blood cells are the basophils, neutrophils, eosinophils, monocytes, and then your lymphocytes. So here, lymphocytes are then broken into your T cells and your B cells. Also over here, you have these large granular lymphocytes called natural killer cells. Now, some of these are known as granulocytes, and some of these are known as agranulocytes. A granulocyte means it has stained cytoplasmic granules in it. So neutrophils, eosinophils, basophils all have these stained pigments in them. Basophils release histamine that causes your inflammatory response, so antihistamine would be preventing that. Inflammation is an important part of your immune response. So neutrophils are your most abundant white blood cells. They can increase if you have a bacterial infection, so those white blood cell counts will go up. Eosinophils are an important activator of other components of the immune system, but also are the ones that activate if you have a parasitic infection. So they'll surround these parasitic worms and try to destroy them. And then monocytes. Monocytes, this is how they go around in the blood. When they get to the tissues, they become macrophages. It's where they become active, and they're active phagocytic killers, eating bacteria, alerting the immune system, and so forth. Lymphocytes so monocytes and lymphocytes, they are agranulocytes. They don't have those stained cytoplasmic granules. And then the lymphocytes over here are important members of the adaptive immune system. So T cells are the main part of your immune system. B cells are then what produce antibodies. They become what are called plasma cells and secrete antibodies. We'll talk about that in the lymphatic part in the next video. Like I said, that kind of goes hand in hand here. And the last formed element we have are these platelets. Platelets are just fragments of these cells called megakaryocytes. And platelets play a very, very important factor in clotting. So if your blood vessel ruptures, these platelets adhere to the collagen fibers, secrete some chemicals that cause more platelets, and try to form a platelet plug. They lead to what's called a vascular spasm then. And then if they can't seal that cut, they then recruit the clotting factors to form what's called a fibrin clot. And that's called hemostasis, that clotting mechanism. So these are known as thrombocytes. You might have heard of a thrombus before. A thrombus is a blood clot that forms, and then if it gets dislodged and moves around, it becomes an embolus. And if it gets lodged in somewhere like the heart, that's where it becomes not a heart, the lungs. That's where it becomes a pulmonary embolism. So there's a couple different terms there for if these clots move around the body. So that's why if you're sitting for long periods of time, you should get up and walk around, because getting that blood pulling in your calf muscles is very dangerous for clot formation. But besides that, platelets play a very, very important part in blood clotting. Last little bit here, we talked about it a lot already, but just to make sure we highlighted all of it, the structure, function, and composition of blood. Blood is a suspension. So here, if we look at the composition of blood, if you take a vial of blood and spin it down in a centrifuge or let it sit, it'll settle out. About 45% of that is hematocrit. Hematocrit is the red blood cells. So you can look at red blood cell counts, the percent of your blood that's red blood cells. If that's elevated, it suggests that you might be making too many red blood cells. I think it's called polycythemia, where you're making too many. And then you could be making too little red blood cells. Say your red blood cell count is down. Yeah, polycythemia. This image has it right there. Another image I used did not have that. Anemia, then, too few red blood cells. Anemia is when your body is not getting enough oxygen delivered to it. Now, that means you're not carrying enough on red blood cells. There are many different forms of anemia. You could have blood loss related anemia. You could have not making enough red blood cells, not enough iron in your diet. You could have an intrinsic factor where you have a B12 limitation, where you're not getting enough B12, which is important for red blood cell production, and so forth. Polycythemia, where you're making too much, could be a signal of cancer of the blood. Now, all these blood cells, the hematopoietic stem cells that derive all these other formed elements, are in the bone marrow. So all of these originate in the bone marrow. So blood cancer is usually bone marrow cells related. Now, depending on which one of these cells is affected, depends on which sort of leukemia or myeloma that you have. So there's non-Hodgkin's, there's Hodgkin's lymphoma, there's different lymphomas, different leukemias, and so forth. And usually those are all derived from different parts of this pathway. So we're not going to go into crazy details on that. Another example of overproduction is of white blood cells. White blood cells you can separate in this layer right here called the Buffy coat. Right there is where you find all the white blood cells. It's less than 1% of all the blood, so it's a very small amount. And you can look at the levels when doing a blood panel, and if this is elevated, so if this is more, you can say, oh, there might be an infection, or there could be something maybe not autoimmune, but something cancerous going on or something like that. And then the final layer up here during the separation of blood is the plasma. Again, there's water, proteins, nutrients, hormones. We talked about that earlier in it. But you can check all the blood. You can check different levels of the blood to do diagnostic blood work when you get that done. Blood is also viscous. It's about 3 to 4 times more viscous than water. Viscous means it's a little thicker, and it has a slightly alkaline pH. The pH is rated around 7.4. We talked about that carbonic acid bicarbonate buffering system. So it stays right between 7.35 and 7.45, and that's where it likes to be. Any changes on that usually leads to autonomic changes in your respiratory or cardiac rates. And of course, blood's purpose is to transport gas and nutrients throughout the body, get rid of toxic things, and so forth. All those white blood cells are a major part of your immune system, so it's your body's defense mechanism, and just overall maintaining your body's homeostasis. Your blood carries a lot of heat with it, so temperature, and it can keep that blood closer to your core when you are sick. Now, it does work with your autonomic nervous system, or when you are warm, it puts blood closer to the extremities, leads to sweating. You then can release that heat. So blood has a lot of important functions in the body. Now, the last thing I want to talk about here is blood typing. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail on this because I can make a whole video on blood typing. But this is your ABO. So blood typing is ABO blood groups. So you can be blood type A, blood type B, blood type AB, or blood type O. And then you can even include the Rh factor and be Rh positive or Rh negative. What these are referring to are the carbohydrates that are sticking off the red blood cells. So we all have a fingerprint, and our body only allows things to be given to us with that fingerprint. If you are A type blood, you can be given A type blood because your body thinks it's yours. If you're given B type blood, you don't recognize this fingerprint, so you reject it. So you produce these B antibodies that attack the B antigen and you destroy it. So here we have antibodies, and you make anti-B, which attacks that antigen and mounts an immune response, and you destroy those red blood cells, and it leads to dangerous amounts of hemoglobin, and agglutination in your blood can affect your kidneys. So blood transfusion reactions are not a good thing. So it's important to know your blood type. AB here doesn't produce any antibodies. So it doesn't reject any blood. So if you're AB positive, Rh stands for rhesus factor, you will not reject any blood type. So you are the universal acceptor. O type though, you have anti-A and anti-B antibodies, so you will reject both A type and B type. But you could give your blood to anyone. So A, B, and AB will not reject your blood because you have no fingerprint on yours. Now, we didn't talk about this factor. If you are Rh positive, you cannot give to an Rh negative individual because Rh negative individuals will have antibodies or can develop antibodies against that Rh positive antigen, which would be another thing sticking off the cell. That's important in pregnancies. It's called rhesus fatalis syndrome, where an Rh negative mother could have an Rh positive baby is if the father is Rh positive, and then the mother on the second pregnancy, unless she came in contact with Rh positive blood before, would produce antibodies against Rh positive. And since antibodies are shared across the placenta, those antibodies would attack the baby's blood, and that would not be a good thing. A RhoGAM shot can be given to help protect the mother in those situations. So this is just a big general overview of blood. Next, we're going to be going into the lymphatic system. We're going to be talking more about the defense mechanisms here for those lymphocytes and how they work, mainly the T and B cells, for how they work in the lymphatic system, where they seed and how they function. But this was just a fun little overview going over blood, how oxygen is carried in the red blood cells, and so forth. Like always, if you have any questions, please reach out and let me know. If not, see you all in the next video. Bye-bye.